Is the iPad Air 5th generation that came out over a year and a half ago now still worth it in 2023, even after its £100 price hike? Since release, we ended up getting a new iPad Pro that gave us more power to give us a reason to jump ship over to that more expensive model. And on top of that, we ended up getting the new 10th generation iPad that on paper looks like great value for money. So let's talk about the iPad Air and see if it is truly worth it in 2023. The first place to start with this iPad is going to be discussing the display, as this is what you're going to be looking at 99% of the time. With it, you're getting a 10.9 liquid retina display, with it completely outshining the new iPad in almost every department outside of the quality of the display. And what I mean by this is that it's got better colour accuracy than the 10th generation iPad, and on top of that, it's got the anti-reflective display that the Pro also has. However, when it comes to the pixel density, every single one of these has pretty much the identical spec. The iPad and iPad Air are identical, and then the Pro's got ever so slightly more pixel density because instead of it being a 10.9 inch, it's an 11 inch display. However, the only thing that you're actually missing with the iPad Air that you get within the Pro is the ProMotion display, which is just Apple's fancy way of saying that it's got 120Hz, which is very nice and smooth to use. However, it's non-essential for most people. But just to sprinkle in that little bit extra that you get with the Pro, you also get 100 nits of extra brightness at its max quality, which again, for most people isn't going to matter, primarily because most people aren't going to be standing outside in broad daylight with it all glaring down. You're going to be in your living room and having decent quality lighting anyway. The second most important part though of choosing your iPad is going to be the processing power that you actually require, but before we actually delve into that, we need to just quickly categorize what iPad is for what type of customer, or at least what customer Apple are trying to get with each iPad. So with your standard iPad, this is pretty much for your everyday people. This is for the people who are literally just simply browsing and at most maybe playing some games every now and again, but non-intensive. Then you have the iPad Pro, which is on the other end of the spectrum for customers who are looking to have that pro experience within mainly creative fields. So for example, you can do a lot of Photoshop, Lightroom within this, but it's also used for people within the music industry, animation industry, movie industry, and so on. So whereabouts does the iPad Air fit into this? More in particular, it is aimed towards students more than anything. You can tell this mainly by the price and also the marketing around it. However, on top of that, it's more for people who just don't want to spend that extra bit of money for a chip that is slightly better than this one. So in terms of comparing each individual chipset, with the standard iPad Air, you're getting the M1 chip, which is decent overall. Currently, it's now starting to lag behind, especially with all of the new ones that have come out across the board and improved versions from the M1 Pro, M1 Max to the M2, M2 Pro, and so on. However, with the iPad Pro, you end up getting the M2 chip, which is roughly, at least according to Apple, 20% better, which again, give or take, it's a little bit less probably, more than anything, but this is Apple graphs for you when it comes to what they'll roughly estimate them being a little bit better as, and again, it's whether or not you actually need that power more than anything. However, the one that is more confusing, but we'll probably eventually get the M1 chip when this gets the M2 and makes the iPad Pro and Air basically the same, again, is just the 10th gen iPad. This iPad comes with the A14 Bionic chip, which is a chip from the iPhone 12, a phone that came out a good while ago now, and not only that, literally isn't that great. The iPhone 12, out of all of the more recent ones, isn't that particularly good, especially when you consider the 11 holds up really well for its time, and the 12 pretty much gets outshone all the way through by the 13 and 14. Now, I'm going to quickly run through the battery and port department, primarily because they're almost identical in every single way. In terms of the port on these things, with the iPad, you're basically just getting a USB-C port. With the Air, you're getting a USB-C port. And then with the Pro, you're getting a USB-C port. However, it actually allows you to go with Thunderbolt 4 as well, just giving you faster transfer speeds. And in terms of the battery life, they claim roughly 10 hours of battery life when you're watching videos or just browsing, which I kind of doubt. This is across the board on all of them as well, by the way, so all three of them quote the same battery life. I don't necessarily believe it, primarily because in my experience from using a lot of different things and a lot of different tech, I'd say for the average person, you're going to get about 7 hours of usage because you're going to be going in between, let's say, some more heavier work sometimes to then a lot more lighter stuff where you are literally just browsing different web pages. Now, all three of them do have some form of biometric login, with the iPad Pro being the only one that doesn't have Touch ID. That one instead has Face ID, so it's not really something that you need to worry about. It shouldn't be something that makes you jump at the Pro instead, because to be honest, they're both going to be equally as fast as one another unless you're holding your tablet upside down. But one thing I actually have to give the standard iPad in this case is the camera placement on the front. This is something that they've shown within this tablet, and I hope they bring to the next iPad Airs, which will probably be released either later on this year and or most likely early next year, which is the camera placement being on the front, but in the long horizontal side of it. So let's say instead of you being on a call with a friend, when you're FaceTiming and looking directly into the center of your display, but on their end it looks like you're just off into the distance, you're actually lined up properly for a change, which is actually really good. Hopefully they bring it to the Pro and the Air. They should do if it's on the standard base model, but yeah, it's just something to think about as well. In terms of the speakers, for the standard iPad and this iPad Air, you both get 2 speakers built in, which isn't too bad. On the iPad Air anyway, I'm not 100% sure on the baseline iPad, it does sound okay. It sounds better than, let's say, my iPad mini, which sounds like tin cans making volume. However, with the Pro, you get 4 different speakers which are built into the corners instead, which gives you a better sound quality, but also, when I've used these, they're so much better quality than you would expect from a tablet. It reminds me very much so of the MacBook Pro, at least the 14 and 16 inch versions, that their speakers are just absurdly good for something that's in a laptop, which almost every single laptop doesn't have that good speakers. Now this is where we get into the territory of something that could change your mind in regards to either getting the standard iPad or the iPad Air. So if you're on the fence of getting these two, this next section will probably sell you on either or outside of the processing power, which is the Apple Pencil and keyboard, which to be honest is probably the weirdest thing I've seen Apple do in a very long time. It's just odd all round. So what I mean by this is that the iPad Air and Pro both use the 2nd generation pencil. They both have the magnetic connection on the side that also allows it to charge. It all looks sleek, looks really good, and looks really professional. Whereas you've got the standard iPad, which you might think, well, it's got the little bit on the side for magnetic connection. Well, it doesn't support Gen 2 Apple support, so it's non-useful. It doesn't do anything for you. On top of that, like I said, it uses the Gen 1 Apple Pencil, which charges by lightning, which, for anyone who didn't know about this, basically means that the old iPads used to look like drumsticks, where you had to plug them into the bottom of the iPad for them to charge, which just kind of made them look a little bit ridiculous. However, obviously on this one it's USB-C, so you literally can't charge it by the iPad standardly anyway. So instead what you have to do is buy the Gen 1 Apple Pencil with the bundle that Apple will sell you for £100 less than the Gen 2 Apple Pencil that gives you a USB-C to Lightning connection to then plug in to your iPad, which looks better than having it look like a drumstick and it looks a little bit more functional. However, it's just an odd process to have to do to charge your pencil when you have the thing on the side to be able to do it anyway. It seems more like a feature they took out so that it kind of justifies pushing people up that ladder towards getting the iPad Air and making the iPad Air even better of a deal for most customers. But then on top of that, you also have the keyboard, which, to be honest, I don't necessarily care too much about. I think for the average person, you're not going to be getting a keyboard case if you're getting a standard iPad, but if you are, just to make you aware of it, you get the folio case with that one instead of the iPad Air. Or with the iPad Pro, you can get the actual Magic keyboard, which is so much better. It's an actual keyboard, sounds like a keyboard, feels like a keyboard, and also gives you a better trackpad. So all round, you're just getting better quality accessories with these. Yes, they're more expensive, but with that, you are actually getting better quality. It's not just like they're trying to sell you an extra £10 worth of a little cable to charge your pencil. Now, the last section that can truly rinse you of all your money is going to be the storage. Now, outside of choosing if you want your tablet to be cellular or not, the only differences that actually increase the price is then going to be your storage and if you want some form of software, but realistically the software we don't care about. The storage is very important to many people because if you want a tablet that's going to last you longer than, let's say, 4 years, you're probably going to want something with 128GB, most likely. Here's where the issue comes in. The standard iPad and iPad Air both only come in at 64GB or 256GB, which may sound amazing. However, this is where you get into their tricky just plays. So with the iPad Air, let's say you're completely sold on that because you're watching this video, most likely you're thinking, is this actual tablet worth it? Now, if you want to actually have more storage than 64GB, you're going to be having to pay £849 for the 256GB iPad Air, which means you are now only £50 less than the standard iPad Pro, which you then get into the territory of, is that extra £50 worth it when you get a load of extra features but you get half the storage? this is when you get into the pricing ladder of Apple. But talking about the pricing, I think this is what we need to talk about last. And the reason why I say that is that I think a lot of people will probably hear many different things being said in this video of, oh well, the extra display doesn't sound worth it to me. And you find out that, well, to be honest, most likely the Air is probably your best friend when it comes to an overall choice. You may end up going for the standard iPad, or you might think to yourself, well, I've been using 120Hz displays on my MacBook, on my tablet, and so on. I want to upgrade to that Pro to make sure that I still get that 120. Maybe that is the case. You end up getting, for £499, the standard iPad, which is a price hike from the previous one. You can still get the Gen 9 iPad, I believe, for £320, so you do have that option as well. However, obviously, they brought this one out, which is £499. Then your next choice is the standard baseline Air, coming in at £669, which it's a price hike from last year, because last year this tablet was worth £569, making it most likely the best value for money tablet across the board, no matter any discussion. And then after that, it's £899 for the iPad Pro baseline model. What this is their price hiking model that they have across everything. Most companies do this, but if you're going to take anything away from this video, make sure to actually think about what you need when it comes to choosing your next tablet. For me, for example, I'm interested in the future of getting an iPad Pro. Do I need one? Not really. I don't really use it for anything, really. I literally have an iPad mini that I use very rarely, but all I use it for is watching videos. When I go traveling, I use it for Lightroom. And then, yeah, outside of that, I use it to take some notes on some things. It's very rare, though, that I'm using it. So for me, the iPad Pro is probably an unnecessary purchase. And like I said, though, if you're going to take anything away from this video on top of if this tablet is worth it for you, which personally, I would still say it's the best value for money tablet on the market, even with its £100 price hike that they did last year. It's just that you need to be very wary of the price, ladder that Apple have. So if you do want that extra storage, just question to yourself before you say, you know what, I'm going to spend that extra £50 on the tablet that I'm not really going to be using half the time. Just think to yourself, is that extra money that you're spending between the iPad Air 64GB to the 256GB worth it when it's then going to push you over the top to get the 128GB iPad Pro? Is that price jump of £240 worth it? Think it through before you do go to purchase. My last statement when it comes to this tablet is that I do think the Air is definitely the best option for the majority of people out there, just because it does everything you need, it will last a while, and also you get all the power that you need with it. At least with that, you also can get an Apple Pencil if you decide to. However, my big caveat to this is that if you are just going to be using it for browsing, if you're just going to be using it for literally nothing else outside of watching videos and browsing, you're probably good with just the standard iPad, purely because outside of the pencil side of things, which most people aren't going to get for their tablet, you're probably okay. You're all good. But like I said, if you're going to take anything away from this, think about the price ladder when you next go to purchase. And if you do enjoy content on this channel around tech, make sure to subscribe. I upload tech, productivity, and photography content every single week to the channel. So if you are interested, make sure to subscribe for more content like that. I'll be talking about all the Apple stuff that's going to be announced probably over the next 3 months in detail. So I can't wait for all that to be happening. Can't wait for the event and just to see what they unveil with the new phone. So yeah, if you are interested, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.